Just want to let everyone know we're going to get started on the afternoon portion. And again, we do have folks that are joining us remotely. So if you do have questions in the room, please wait until we have a microphone so that the folks who are following and tracking the meeting externally can also hear. And then if folks who are tracking online have questions, obviously they can email those into us and we will handle and respond accordingly. Again, I'm Diane Stanton, the Director of External Affairs here at CalSTRS, and it's good to see everyone again. I wasn't able to make our last meeting in May, and so we had John Marinick-Simkowick from our GR, Government Relations team, co-moderate. So John, again, thanks for doing that, and I will turn over to Rita.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Sacramento. My name is Rita Gallardo-Good, and I'm the Assistant Director for Employer Services in Member Account Services. I think I've come full circle because I was over this at CalPERS under Stakeholder Relations, and I'm back. So it's wonderful to be here with you, and I believe that I'll be doing this meeting with Diane ongoing. With that, I'd like to take a moment, a privilege, to introduce our Interim Director of Member Account Services, Jeff Zimmer. And I believe that he has a few words.
Thank you, Rita. Thank you, everyone. I just wanted to mention that I am turning on the mic now. And a pleasure to meet all of you. I look forward to working with you. I was asked to step in when Christine left and take on the Interim Director of Member Account Services. I'm also the Director of Business Transformation in our Pension Solution Project, so I have a lot of overlap with the design and the functionality of the new system that you'll be using in the future to report. So there's some overlap there, helping with the soft launch of the employer readiness environment that you'll hear more about. And so I'm familiar with the project, and I'm getting familiar with Member Account Services. So I just wanted to say hello. You can see my face. If you have Christine's number, it rings on my phone now. So that still works. I made sure that if that number is out there, I want to make sure it goes somewhere. So it's going to go to me. So if you have questions, work with your representatives, work with your staff, and then I'm always there to support you as well. So thank you, Rita. I won't take any more time, but I just wanted to say hello so you could see who I am. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Okay, we're going to move to e-payments. So from our financial services branch, this is a legislative proposal that CalSTRS worked on last year, was signed into law by Governor Brown, and it's now, we've been working, doing stakeholder relations and getting folks feedback on e-payments and how that would work for our districts. And so David is here to give us another update. Thank you.
Thank you. Afternoon, my name is David Munoz. This will be the third time that we've discussed Assembly Bill 2052 here at in this venue, and so I'll just provide a very quick update. So just to recap for anybody that wasn't here or wasn't aware of Assembly Bill 2052, really at its core, that chaptered legislation is now going to require that all of the reporting entities begin submitting their contributions to the system in a electronic format, specifically through an automated clearinghouse method. We can get into some more details of that later, or I can take that offline for any of you that would like more information on that. The main update that I wanted to provide for you today is that the legislation required that the CalSTRS board take an action on an implementation date, which they have done at our July meeting. So the implementation date, the effective date for that particular requirement for the reporting entities will be July 1st, 2020, so approximately a year from today. I wanted to also point out that an employer directive will be going out at the end of the month that will have more details and more information regarding this. My unit, I oversee the Treasury here. We have an email box for any questions that you may have and contact information. It's epayments@calstrs.com. We are currently finalizing a splash page on our website, which will have FAQs. It will have a recorded presentation that we've done on this particular requirement to go through all of the details of this. And that should be ready very soon. What else did I want to mention? So for any of you that are currently not submitting payments via an ACH method, we currently are offering ACH debit right now. It's free of charge. So to the extent that any of you would like to sign up today, I can do that for you. And if you're waiting for ACH credit, we're currently working through that now, and we'll be able to offer that to you in the near future. So with that, any questions? Seeing none, thank you, everyone. Oh, yes.
Hi, Anna Lambert, Riverside County. So you said there's a circular coming out at the end of the month?
Yeah, it should be out early September, late August.
Okay, we have independent charters that use the system outside of our own. So we are currently receiving checks for them that we have to take to the bank and deposit. Is that going to be addressed of what the process would be, or we have asked CalSTRS in the past if we can make those charters make their own deposits, and we were told no. So it feels like we will be upfronting the money for them if we have to use EFT for those charters.
Good question. Thank you very much. So I think two things come to mind. The first is this particular legislation is directed towards the reporting entities, which would be you. So just from that read, yes, this legislation would apply to your unit and not be impacting those chartered schools. The second thing I would mention to you is that to the extent that that's going to create a burden on your entity, we can work through that with a potential waiver for you. So to the extent you would have to front funds that weren't obviously that you didn't have available, we could work through a waiver process with that and extend the time period for actually complying with the legislation. I think that maybe you and I can take this offline and work through that together, but I think there is a venue to help you with that.
Thank you.
No problem. Anything else? Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. Oh, yes. Please.
Thank you. I just wanted to verify, currently our county office submits to the state of California, who then sends the funds over to your office. So are we good, or are you saying that we have to EFT to you directly?
That's interesting. Is this for teachers that are working at like corrections?
No, our contributions.
And they go to the state of California first.
Yeah. It's pay.gov or something to that effect.
Okay, why don't we, let's just take that one offline too. I'll get your information after this and we can, that's news to me. I wasn't aware that that was a venue. Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good afternoon. Oh, another one. Getting popular today.
And if you can please announce your name and where you're from, that's really helpful for our follow-up process. Thank you.
Diana from Solano County. So we use pay.gov to make the payments. How do we go about that?
Jennifer, do you have any thoughts on that? Just grab the mic. I'm not familiar with.
I'm sorry,
Thank
to
you very much.
clarify, you said .gov? Are you talking about gov1.com? Yes. So that is the ACH debit method, so you're good.
Okay, all right. So it was the name, I'm sorry. So what was your name again? Teresa. So with regards to your question, it was just the naming that you were referring to. Yes, you're already compliant. You're already submitting through the state's ACH contract. So if you're doing that, you're already compliant with the legislation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. Great. Any other questions? Okay, great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, David. We're going to move on to our next agenda item, which is an audits update. So I wanted to bring Larry and Mike up. Larry is our chief auditor. Mike is our deputy auditor.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Larry Jensen, and I'm the Chief Auditor here for CalSTRS. And with me today is also Mike Dutel, who is our assistant director and over our employer audit program. And so I know that you've had a long day already. It's right after lunch, and so they wanted to liven it up a little bit and bring the chief auditor in. And so hopefully we can at least share some information with you that will help you. Do some of you folks work in the business area? Is that the, right? Okay, so analysts and auditors will get along fine. So thanks for having us. Do you have the PowerPoint on that, or am I just? There we go. I think there's a handout for you too. So I just wanted to give you a little background on your audits. Has anybody here ever had the pleasure of a CalSTRS audit? That a few of you. Yeah,
Raise your hands
okay.
high.
Yeah,
There you
and they're
go.
still smiling. No, she's not. Okay. So I think that's an important thing, though, is because it's actually a small percentage of employers that we go out and audit. And we're going to, when you think about it, there's like 17 or 1,800, school districts or reporting units that we can go out and we got to determine who are we going to audit. And Mike's going to talk a little bit about how do we do that. So you'll be informed about it. But, it's real important. These audits basically, they started back in the early 1990s, and they're authorized by the Education Code. And, they're really important, not only to us, but I think to our members. And here's why, is because, the members of this, our teachers, they rely upon those estimates that they receive from CalSTRS in making their retirement decisions. And what we want to do is to be able to provide them with the best estimate that we can so that they can make good informed decisions. We can only do that if we have accurate information, right? And so the more accurate the information, the more complete the information, the better estimate they're going to have, the better decision they're going to make. And then also, all of this information flows to our financial reporting through our financial reports. And so if you think about the contributions that come in, the benefit payments that go out, the liability that's booked, that's all part of our financial statements, and it gets audited. And so we need to make sure that it's accurate also for our financial audit. And then, one of the things that when we do end up making an adjustment to a member's account, what we always hear from them is, I thought my employer was reporting everything accurately, right? And they count on you to do that. And so it's really important. When you think about the CalSTRS business model, we have two really, really important assets. One is, of course, is our investments, right? But the other is our member data, right? Because it's that member data, and we rely on that member data to not only for calculation of the benefit, but also that future liability, right? That we have to book as well, which impacts what? Your contribution rates, right? So if it's the more accurate, the better it's going to be. We'll understand how it all flows much different. And so it's really important to us to have these, and the idea when we conduct these audits is really that we want to make sure that the information is reported accurate, that it complies with the teacher's retirement law, and that the information that we're auditing is supported by your payroll information, and that's what we're looking for. And when the auditors go out, that's what they'll ask for. What's new is we're now conducting what's called limited scope audits. That's one of our terms that we use. But what that means is that we're doing a little more data analysis, and when we look at your contributions that are reported, we see kind of a pretty steady pattern, and then all of a sudden maybe there's like a little beep, right? Because extra contributions came in. And so we'll try to dial in on that and say, okay, well, what is that? What caused that, increase in contributions? And oftentimes we find that it's like a one-time payment that has occurred. And so we'll ask about that. And typically in an audit, we'll have an entrance conference, and we'll come out and we'll spend 4 or 5 days at your place with you and ask you for all kinds of information and a lot of documents. But on the limited scope audits, we just dial in on that one transaction that was reported that caused that little beep, right? And so when we dial in on that, we'll just call you up over the phone and ask you for the information. right? And so we do those remotely. We don't do them on site. We'll do it over the phone. You provide us the information. If you don't provide us the information, we might come visit you. But it runs a whole lot smoother, and we're able to issue a report, have a discussion with you about it, and then if there's any corrections that need to be made, then we can make those corrections. Well, why is that kind of an advantage, right? Well, it's a lot less disruptive to you, and it's really targeted on just that particular transaction, right? It helps us provide you with some training as well, and I think we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the agenda, but we'll also provide some targeted training on just that specific issue so that prevents problems from going forward. Well, the other big advantage of these is that it focuses only on active members, right? So when we go out and we're looking and we want to sample, we pull a sample of 10 members or so, we'll say, hey, you know, these are active members. And so the idea is that if there are corrections, that those corrections are made before that member decides to retire, right? So that they can have a better estimate, make a better decision, right? And so we're able to correct those problems, you know, before it really becomes an error, because after they retire, you know, and we have to go back and we do a correction because of something that was not reported accurately, impacts their retirement allowance, you know, they're on a fixed income, you know, we get it, and it's not a pleasant thing for anybody, right? And so we try to avoid that, and this is really helping us. And so when you think about all of the school districts, and we only have a few auditors that, how many do we have on the 20? 16. Oh, that go out in the field, 16 that go out in the field. So we got 1,800. You know, it'd take us about 20 years or more to go out and do that. So we have to figure out exactly who do we want to share the love with. And so I'm going to ask Mike to talk to us a little bit today about how do we determine what school districts that we're going to audit.
Great. Thank you, Larry. There's probably quite a few people in here that an auditor gave you a call to schedule an audit, and you're wondering, why was I selected of all things for an audit by CalSTRS? Well, we're going to make 84 of those calls this year, maybe more, and we're going to either schedule a full scope audit, or like Larry says, a limited scope audit. If you're lucky enough, it'll be a limited scope audit because it was a lot quicker, less painful. Because for the full scope audit, we look at a wide range of things. We look at the demographic information, we look at post-retirement earnings that were reported to us or not reported to us, unused sick leave, basic and excess. We look at the member versus non-member data, and our biggest test that we look at is compensation, which is pay rate and all the special compensation items that are reported to us. And like Larry mentioned, the limited scope audits, we're going to focus on one of those payroll reporting elements. For instance, if we look at special compensation, we might narrow it down to one-time payments.
I think on those full scope audits, we also go into the demographics as well.
Right.
Right? And so we're looking at the demographics of the member to make sure that we have all of the actuarial information.
Yeah, correct birth date and correct sex, right. And how we select districts to be audited. Every year we do an annual risk assessment, and we come up with various risk factors, and we pull the data for that, and we rate the districts based on that data. So each district is rated as high, medium, or low risk. And this slide here shows that we did have 11 risk factors, and it shows the number of districts in each risk factor. For instance, risk factor 5 there, it shows 80. That's one-time payments, where we found that special compensation was reported lump sum once during that year. And it's a certain dollar amount. Here for this 80, it was $2,500. So to get ranked on that risk factor, a district would have to report at least one-time payment of $2,500 or more. If you didn't do that, then you won't fall in that one risk category. And we also look at how many times a district reports that and how much. So the greater that one-time payment and the more members that were reported for that one-time payment, the higher you'll receive for that one risk value. All risk assessments are based on impact and an occurrence. So the more members you have, the greater the impact and the greater the occurrence is going to be. And that's why you're going to be rated a little bit higher for each of those. And actually, that's applied to all risk factors across the board. So for the one district, we'll look at what they scored for 1 through 11, get that total, and we'll do that for all the districts, and we'll put them out. And of course, if you scored the most, you're the highest risk district. And over the last few years since I've been here, the LA USD has always been #1. And there's some districts that don't score any, except for, you might be wondering, #7 is, and that's if you have not been audited within the last 5 years. So nearly 1,500 districts haven't been audited in the last 5 years. That is because we only have 16 auditors. We can't spread the wealth that well. And that's why we went into the limited scope audits. We can audit more members and look at more issues that way.
I think that's just as important a factor, not so much the number of audits that we're performing, but when we go out, how many members have the potential to be impacted. And so generally, it's about 20% annually. So our coverage is about 20% of our total membership based on the districts that we audit and the samples that we perform. And so over time, we got, over several years, we got some pretty good coverage of a lot of our members. And so I think that's important. And another point too is when we're analyzing this district or the assets, or I'm sorry, the member data, we don't know, the name of the member. We don't know their position or anything like that. We don't look at that in this process. We just are looking at the payroll data that's reported to us, and that's it. So when we're trying to determine this, it has nothing to do with, number of positions or anything like that, or who's in those positions or whatnot. We're looking at that. And we're also analyzing that data, and just a couple of tips, a few things that we might notice. Like if you are reporting post-retirement earnings and you for all of your post-retirement earnings, it all of a sudden just happens to stop being reporting to us right at the maximum amount that the member can earn. We might want to just go, what happened there? Because that's interesting that they do that. Or you've reported it to us in the past, and then all of a sudden you stop reporting post-retirement earnings. We may look at that, and so we're looking for changes that occur in the patterns of the reporting.
Right. In fact, those are going to be 2 risk factors for our next risk assessment. Let's see. This slide here shows how the impact and occurrence happens. So line 1, community college districts, they're normally larger districts, so of course they're rated more in the high risk area, whereas line 3, charter schools are much smaller schools, so they're rated more medium and low risk category. But for our full scope audits, we're mainly going to look at these agencies or districts that are rated as high risk, and we'll use those for our full scope audit. But we'll also pull in a few medium and low risk districts to be audited. So everybody in this room has an opportunity to be audited. We won't leave you out. For limited scope audits, for the special compensation unused sick leave, that's what we're going to do this year, continuing into next year. Those are the 3 risk factors we use for special compensation. Since we started with one-time payments, I'll use that as an example. That other slide showed that there was 80 employers that had one-time payments over a certain dollar amount. So if those districts rated high in that and low on everything else, rest assured that district's going to get a limited scope audit for the one-time payment. Same thing for unused sick leave. If you rated high on those 2 risk factors for unused sick leave, but low on everything else, it's likely that you're going to be audited for this unused sick leave.
What do we look for with unused sick leave?
For unused sick leave, we look at basic and excess sick leave. So for basic, a common finding that we do find is if a district gives the member the whole year's worth of sick leave in the beginning of the year, 10 or maybe 12 days, and they retire mid-year. So that's a finding because they've been over-reported for sick leave. And for excess, we find that the districts commingle both basic and excess, and they report everything as basic. So that's a finding too. Or they might have separated out as basic and excess, but As a person utilizes sick leave, they take it from the excess first instead of the basic. So that's going to be a finding, because if a person takes a sick day, you have to use basic before you use excess sick leave. And Beth is probably going to talk all about that right after we come on. Okay. So for the audit scope, Larry went into it a little bit. The auditor's going to be looking at the last 2 completed school years, and the auditor's going to take a sample of members to see how a district reported a certain item. For instance, for the one-time payments, the auditor will take maybe 5 to 7 members that received the one-time payment and see how they report it to us. We found a lot of times that the districts misreport that directly to the DB program instead of the DBS, or maybe they reported the DBS, but they included PEPRA members, which it's not reported at all for those members. But if we find that they did that for all sampled members, and the district comes back, oh yeah, that's how we coded in our system to go directly to the DB program, that's what we call a systemic finding. Now, a systemic finding will apply not only to our sampled members, but to all members that receive that one-time payment. And Larry will continue with the types of findings we find.
Thanks, Mike.
Welcome.
You know, I'm just going to back up 1 second here. So see that first bullet point there on the 2-year time frame? And so in the past, we used to use prior year and prior year data, so prior year data, right? So it's going back really, could be as far back as 3 years when we're doing our analysis. We changed the time frame of our risk assessment, and so that we're only using now the most recent school year, right? And so that's what we're looking at when we're doing our data analysis. When we do the full scope on-site type of audit, though, we're going to look at 2 years. The reason we do that is if there's increases or changes from one reporting year to the next, right? So we look for that variance there. And that's the reason why we do that. But we're not going back, 3 years like we used to in the past. And so the other thing that we're seeing is a reduction, with regards to the impact on our retirees, because we're focusing more on the active members, right, and trying to make those corrections up front. And sometimes, because that's prior year data, there may be a retiree that has retired since that prior year, right, by the time we get out there. But hopefully what that'll do is reduce, if there is an adjustment, reduce the amount of time before we notice it, that we can make the correction. And if they happen to be overpaid, then, if they do owe money back to the system, reduces that amount too. So we're not, several years out, where sometimes it can accumulate rather quickly. And so we're trying to reduce those instances as well. And the most common type of issues that we see now is on the unused sick leave. Mike mentioned that. One of the things that he didn't mention was, what's interesting is sometimes in the reporting of it, Mike did mention that you can earn 10 or 12 or some excess amount, but sometimes we see basic sick leave reported to us in greater amounts than what the member could even accumulate during their years of service, right? And so we'll look, and that may be a quick test that you can do too as you're reporting it, is this really a reasonableness check on the amount that we're reporting here, or should it be really excess versus basic sick leave? And the other type of findings that we're having is really on post-retirement earnings, and again, some of that is sometimes it's not reported to us, or reported inaccurately, or in excess of the limit. And so monitoring that activity is really, really important. And then on compensation, of course, that's extra duty earnings and the one-time payments that we've spoken of a little bit. We went through kind of an era where there wasn't a lot of salary increases, right? So often the districts will give a one-time payment or a bonus in lieu of a salary increase, right? And so those should be credited to the DBS. And what we're seeing is a lot of them are credited to the DB. In fact, on that chart that Mike showed, I think Which number was that, Mike? It was number 5. Yeah, number 5. So you'll see that there's a few in there, and if they hadn't been audited, right here, this one. So there's 80 is that number, in case you can't see it there, that were identified. And so, but if they haven't been previously audited, you know, then we didn't pick it up during that audit, then those are the limited scopes that we're going to focus in on there. Some trends that we're seeing, these are the total number of findings and the type of findings that we're seeing. So we do see kind of a slight increase in the number of findings with regards to post-retirement earnings. And then again, the one-time payments obviously is another one that we're seeing a significant increase in, and then excess sick leave. Now, at the same time, we're focusing on those areas, right? And so we're doing an increased number of audits. We're doing the data analytics first, and so it helps us to really dial in on it. And so we're keying in on those issues. Of the 15 audits that we did last year that were limited scope audits, 13 of them, you know, had findings. There's a couple that didn't. And they were all 13 systemic, yeah. And so a systemic finding, what that means is, while we only look at 10 members in our sample, if we can see that all 10 members have that same reporting error, then it's probably likely that everybody who was involved in that transaction, it was misreported, right? And we don't spend the time and kind of go back and look through all of that, but we ask the district to do that. And so generally, it's all on one, you know, it happened at a certain time, you know when it happened, you know what payroll period it was in, and you know exactly who's impacted, right? And so we ask the district to submit a correction on that, and they work with our business area to do so, and we just encourage them to contact the business area and submit the corrections. And so that's kind of what we're seeing in our trends. I think, you know, it really helped a lot with PEPRA. We're not seeing some of the things that we used to see in the past. We're not seeing, you know, health and automobiles and your cell phone bills mixed in with your salaries and things like that we used to see. And I think that helped define the creditable compensation. There was, you know, previously it was a little bit confusing, somewhat, you know, challenging. And so I think the PEPRA really helped us define that a lot better. I know that there's still some areas that, you know, have to think through a little bit, but I think for the most part, that really helped us. This is on the systemic findings that I just talked about, and so we even in our full scope audits, about 50% of those we find kind of systemic issues as well. And so when we think about these, you know, we enjoy it because we're auditors. I know that you don't enjoy it always, you know, that we're out there visiting with you and taking up your time, and I understand that, and it can be somewhat, you're busy, we get it, and so we want to be the least disruptive that we can, but at the same time, you know, there's value to this to our members in that there's fewer reporting errors. You know, we're able to help with targeting the training on what's necessary and try to avoid future problems, and we get these errors corrected before retirements occur so that, you know, all of our teachers can make better decisions and they'll get more accurate estimates, and it helps with our financial reporting, and then, you know, we'll see fewer adjustments going back multiple years. And so we really think that this is a much better approach for us, and I think it eases the burden on the districts as well, and yet more effective in the long run. And so one thing that I would like to say, though, is that, you know, at the conclusion of each audit, Mike didn't know I was going to promote this, but at the conclusion of each audit, we also reach out with a survey. And so we want your feedback about the audit process, and it helps us to really evaluate what we're doing and how we're doing it, and improve that process. And so we value that feedback. We read all of it. I want to encourage you that if you are selected for an audit, you know, that you provide that feedback for us, because I do look at all of those and appreciate that good input that you guys do provide. And so with that, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions about it. Okay, so now everybody knows how to avoid an audit, all right? And that's a good thing. Okay, thanks for having us.
Thank you, Larry and Mike. So as you may be aware, at each of our EAC meetings, we are working to provide you with a type of employer training. And I'd like to welcome up Beth Rosario from the service retirement area, who is going to be going over the unused sick leave policy. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. As Rita mentioned, my name is Beth Ruggiero. I work in service retirement with the benefit adjustment team. And I saw the last EAC and you guys had some very good questions on sick leave, so they decided now is the appropriate time for us to come and do a level set. So please feel free, ask questions throughout the presentation. You don't have to wait until the end, so please feel free. So let's see what we're going to get into here. So we're going to get into some of the basic versus excess sick leave, the different definitions, how base days are looked at, the order of usage, so which sick leave do you use first, the conversion of sick leave at retirement time, how to report it to us, how to correct it if you have reported it and need to make some adjustments, and then some of the frequently asked questions that my team has gotten throughout the past. I know a lot of you guys probably have already gotten some training through our employer services. They have a really good training, so I apologize if this is redundant, but hopefully you'll have a few takeaways too. So basic sick leave is equivalent to 1 day's paid of leave of absence due to illness or injury. The employees can earn up to 1 day of basic sick leave per pay period, and it's important to note that we define that pay period as being no less than 4 weeks or more than 1 calendar month. If your pay period schedule is based on the calendar month, your employee can earn up to the 12 days of basic sick leave in a school year per employer. So we consider the pay periods as reporting periods, if you will. All employers, you all have a standard 12-month reporting period. So for CalSTRS purposes in determining what's considered basic versus excess, we will consider anything 12 and under as basic sick leave. Excess sick leave is also paid leave of absence for illness or injury. However, the key distinction is that these sick leave days are earned in excess of the basic sick leave days, so anything over that 12. So for example, if an employee, you award them 18 days of sick leave for the year, 12 of those we would consider as basic, the remaining 6 would be considered excess. And it's always recommended to track these separately. So the base days are the number of days the member must, the class of employees are required to work to earn the full year of service credit. The base days should not include any school or legal holidays, and the minimum base day allowed is 175. You must report contract base days as a daily figure. If your employee's full-time requirement is an hourly figure, you must convert the figure to a daily equivalent based on a 6-hour workday. If that daily equivalent does go below 175, then you have to report the 175 as that base day. And you'll see the importance of how the base days come in a few slides here. So Mike was mentioning before that there is a certain order of usage for sick leave. So if you by chance have a person who has time that has existed, they were awarded sick leave prior to that July 1st, 1986, that stuff has to go first. Why it's still on the books, man, tell them to take a vacation or something. But, so if they have any, use that first. After that, you're gonna be using all basic sick leave awarded after that July 1st, 1986. And then the final one that you're gonna be using is that excess sick leave bucket. So to convert the sick leave into service credit at retirement, we take their total amount of unused sick leave days, so that's both the basic and the excess days, and we divide that by that contract-based service days. So as you can see in that example there, you can see why it's so important to get that base service days accurate, because it will alter the actual service credit that we award those teachers at retirement. So to report unused sick leave to CalSTRS, you have to use that express benefit report. We lovingly refer to it as the EBR. And you can find that either on the .com website or through the Secure Employer website. I think you guys know it as so. By law, we must receive the form within 30 days of the member's retirement date or within 30 days of the date in which the retirement application is received here, whichever happens later. And I know it's been kind of an issue as far as when you guys know a member goes into that retirement status with us at CalSTRS. So hopefully this will help alleviate a little bit. There is an area within SO, let's see, there's a status change tab. You guys aware of the status change tab? Maybe? Go back and look if not. It's under the employer notification section, and it can provide to you when the employee's status has changed from member to retired here at CalSTRS. So if you don't have access to SO, I urge you to talk to your county office rep to see if you can get that. So 2 things of note, you as employers are responsible to submit the EBR, even if the member doesn't physically come to your office and hand it to you to submit. So that's something that you are required to do. In addition, if the member has 0 sick leave, it is still required for you to submit that form to us. There are a lot of different components that are built into that form that it's still required for you to submit even if they have 0 sick leave. Okay. So if you need to correct any sick leave data that you've already provided to CalSTRS, there is a form for that. It is called the Employment Termination or Sick Leave Data Correction Form. There's no acronym for that. It's like EBR. It's just hard. It's a mouthful, sorry. So these forms are again on .com or on the SO website. You can make any corrections as needed. So 2 years later, you find out, oh my gosh, I can't believe I submitted that inaccurately. I need to make that change. Feel free to submit those corrections when need be. Please note any changes in the excess balances will of course result in either a refund to you or a bill as applicable. One of the common audit findings that we've seen is that you guys are very good and try to get a sick leave as soon as possible, even if the member hasn't retired yet, which we do appreciate. However, the possibility of the member using that sick leave between the time that you submit and the end of the school year, there's a high chance, right? So just please be aware of that and please make corrections on this correction form. And just to let you know, if you are making a correction, so say you have reported 65 days of basic sick leave and 12 days of excess to us, and the teacher ends up using 5 days of their sick leave prior to retirement, then you would go ahead and just actually on this form, you would only need to say the basic sick leave days are going from 65 to 60. You don't need to restate the 12 in any way or anything like that. It's just changing what is actually changing. Okay, so we're going to get into some our frequently asked questions that we have gotten from you guys, and thank you for keeping us on our toes. So, our teacher earns 10 days of basic sick leave per their contract, and they're paid 12 times a year. If they earn 2 sick leave days working summer school, is this considered excess? Any takers? You guys answer this now? Yeah, no, good answer. Okay, no, anything under 12 and under would be considered basic. If they earn any additional days outside of that, that would be considered excess. Healthy workplaces, healthy families. This was a good one when it came through. So are districts required to report unused sick leave granted under the Healthy Workplaces, Healthy Families Act, which is AB 1522, when the member retires? If yes, is it going to be excess unused sick leave? So if the member has maintained any of the sick leave earned under that legislation by the time they retire, we will accept it as basic sick leave. But again, that's only if they have earned up to the 12, right? Is there a standard form we should be using to transfer sick leave from district to district? And what should we do if a district does not accept the sick leave? Unfortunately, this is not something that we can really help you with. This is your internal process with transferring this information from employer to employer. The transfer of sick leave is within the greater ed code, so it's outside of our purview. So if you have questions or need clarification on that, we do urge you to go to the Department of Education. Is accumulated basic sick leave from a classified position allowed to be transferred to CalSTRS when the employee is hired to perform certificated service paying into CalSTRS? So in this situation, if the teacher was previously employed by you in the classified position and then transitions to a certificated with you, the sick leave balance from the classified work can move with the teacher as long as they're staying at your district. At your district, okay. Well, it would be more than likely basic, right? Because at PERS, I don't believe they have excess, right?
No,
Or do they?
they earn that sick leave under classified position, not
Yes, but per the greater ed code, this actually is something that can transfer with them because they're still staying at that district. So yes, it would be all considered as basic sick leave to be utilized in their new position as a certificated member. So the only caveat is, so now they have reporting with PERS, right, for the classified work, and now they have reporting with STRS for the certificated work. If they have a total of 300 days of sick leave at the end of their career, you wouldn't be able to provide 300 days to both PERS and STRS, right? It would have to only go to one entity. So that's the catch, is that you can't double report it, but it does make sense for it to follow with that member if they're staying at the
But
district.
as basic then?
As basic.
Okay, that's what I meant. Thank you.
So sick leave, oh, sorry, one more question.
If by any chance, Anna Lambert, Riverside County, if by any chance the classified work within the same district exceeds the 12 days, then you would have to break it into the basic and the excess?
I'm going to have to look into that. This is something that we've had a couple questions recently, which is why I wanted to touch on the subject. But let me see. I need to kind of understand how PERS offers their sick leave and if it is on a 12, and I don't believe they have excess on their schedule. So we would have to kind of look into that. Okay. So we'd have to take that offline. But I do urge you, if you have those types of questions, submit them to I'll have a mailbox at the end for you to submit those so that we can chat those up.
And the other question would be, if it's coming from a different district, from a classified position, then it will be excess.
It could not be reported to CalSTRS. So that's the caveat, is that it would have to be at your district. So if they would have to be literally retiring with you for them to be able to get credit here at CalSTRS. If they transfer to another district, that sick leave cannot move with them.
Okay.
But go to Department of Education for additional information. Okay, so sick leave for additional assignments. We provide our staff with sick leave for additional assignments. Would this sick leave be considered basic or excess? And are we required to track sick leave separately for different assignments? So if the member has already earned the 12 days of basic sick leave for that year, then any additional sick leave outside of that would be, of course, considered excess. You are not required to track sick leave by assignment, only by employee. So sick leave should not be deducted per assignment either, if that makes sense. So if you have somebody who is working a full-time position and a part-time position, and they're earning sick leave throughout the entire, through the school year, if they're going to take sick leave for their part-time assignment, it's not going to be the sick leave that was awarded for that part-time assignment. It would be deducted from that basic sick leave bucket. So a couple areas I just wanted to pull your attention to. If you go back to your desks, we have some reference items that are on the .com website. The Employer Directive 1706 refers back to that Healthy Workplaces, Healthy Families Act. I believe it has some information on how to report it for membership in addition to sick leave. And then we also have the latest and greatest Employer Directive out there, the 1803, which does discuss some of the information that I provided with you today. And then lastly, we are always open for questions. This is the email box that my team maintains. Express Ben report, not benefit, so just be aware. But you can always submit any questions that you have on submitting sick leave, whatever you need. In addition, you can also submit your EBRs to this mailbox. If we will accept the forms through this mailbox as well, if you are so inclined. Any other questions? Yes.
Please wait for
Teresa
the
Cooper
microphone.
from Stanislaus COE.
Hi, Teresa.
Back on your slide for base days, you had mentioned that we had to report it as 6 hours per day and convert to daily if we were doing this with 6 hours a day. Some of our districts have more than 6 hours a day as their base hours, 7 and a quarter. So would we calculate it based on that instead?
Are these hourly workers or are these?
They're teachers, but they have in their contracts that their days are 8 hours a day or 7 and a quarter hours a day.
So this piece in specific is only if they accrue everything within the hour range, so which is, I believe, more of the
Okay.
community college.
So let's go to a classified employee that chose STRS for their work, and they're an 8-hour a day employee.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be 8 hours? Or
To me, that would be 8 hours. That would be an 8-hour advisor.
All right. So if a district, going back to the certificated, sorry, I'm bouncing around.
Okay.
The district that has 8 hours a day for their work days, they dock them a half day or 3/4 of a day, that could be the 6. And if I'm doing it as 6, it'd be a full day for you, but they really should have a 0.2 of a day or a quarter of a day or something to that effect.
I'm not following.
So the school district will not dock them a full day or half day if they're leaving for a doctor's appointment. They'll even go down to the quarter of a day, 3/4 of a
Got
day,
it.
what
Okay.
have you.
Okay.
And if they're doing it based on 8 hours a day, because they're doing it hourly for their sick time, the conversion to 6 is off.
I would have to
See
put
it
it
in
in,
writing?
yeah, I
Okay.
would have to write it out and play with it a little bit. So if you wouldn't mind, send it to our mailbox and we can,
Sure.
really
Yeah.
look at it.
Will do.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi. Good afternoon.
Hello.
I'm Lori from Santa Clara County Office of Ed. If you have, say, a teacher that transferred from a 6-hour position in one district and then transferred to your district and now is working as an admin, working 8 hours a day, do you have to track those? Do you convert it based on the 8 hours then when you receive that transfer?
If you
or-
received in hourly components, then yes, at the end of the or so if you're tracking everything in hours, then once the person retires, then you would be using the hours needed to required for that position, and you would divide it by that number.
So if the former district tracked it at days, but you're tracking it hours, you would convert it at the 8 hours then for those?
Oh, so you're
days?
doing a conversion to another conversion to another
Yeah,
conversion?
Exactly.
Ooh, that's another good one.
I know.
I do not envy you guys on this stuff. Again, let me map that out with my SMEs and make sure that we're giving you the right answer on that one.
Janelle Morris, San Joaquin County. On the basic sick leave, you indicate here that they can earn the 1-day basic sick leave per pay period, so up to that 12. So we only pay over 11 pay periods, August to June. So would ours be 11, or is it going to be always 12?
So you have no administrators, nobody that works 12?
We would have administrators, yes.
And
not
that's
the
what we're-
teachers.
that's
So
what
you're
we're
looking at
considering,
if we
is that-
have anyone in STRS, so since we have administrators being paid all 12, that would make 12 the base.
That's exactly right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Can you raise your hand, please?
One more in front.
We have one right here in front.
Hi, Veena from Orange County. The example you used about at the same district,
Yes,
a
the classified.
classified employee becomes a certificated, it can be considered basic and all. I mean, can be reported to STRS. Whereas when they move, they had a classified position at District A,
Okay.
and they moved to District B in a certificated position. The PERS law is if you don't retire within 120 days,
Okay.
you lose that sick leave. So
Bummer.
what I'm saying is that I think you should revisit that area to see they can get the benefit, because under Ed Code, the districts can transfer the sick leaves.
Well, that would be the greater ed code, which is
Yeah,
part of
but
the
I'm
part that
saying-
we kind of
no,
have
I'm
no.
just saying so they can get benefit under STRS, just like they are getting when they are in same district.
Mm-hmm.
I think it should be the same rule when they move from District A to B.
I hear you, but it's something outside of my control unless there's a legislative change that would allow for that.
So how did the other one changed, like when they are at same district?
This was something we actually uncovered when one of you fine folks decided to email us about this exact situation at your district. So we had to do a deep dive into the greater ed code to figure out what could actually be accepted here at CalSTRS.
Okay.
And so that's how it all began.
Okay, because in the past, the way it was explained, that would be access. So right now,
I'm gonna go back to that, and if we issue another a directive, I'll make sure that information is included.
okay. And the second thing, almost 2 years ago, there was a big discussion about charging the employers upfront
Oh,
for
annual
the
bill.
access. Then that subject died down.
It is, yes, you're right. It quieted down, I should say. I'm not sure who can speak on this from.
So is it still something that you guys are looking into?
Yes, it is something, but I will have somebody more appropriate to answer that.
Thank you.
I'm Joycelyn Martinez-Wade, Director of Governmental Relations. And so you're right, that's what happened. So we're still looking into it. I think it's something we'd like to try to tackle. We're looking at how it would affect our systems, about the pension solution. You'll get an update of that on that later. So how it would interact with that, we have to consider the costs that would be involved with either that or a current system that we're using. So that's what we continue to look into. So.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Get to the end here.
Thank you, Beth.
Yes.
And so the next item that we have for you is crediting of contributions. And I'd like to welcome Marco Moskutnik.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Marco Masunik with the contributions team. If some of you remember me from the last presentation, quick update. Someone got extra dessert at the family barbecue this summer. For those of you who weren't here or weren't paying attention at the live stream, I said hello to my mother live on television. Well, CalSTRS vision. So now I'm going to dive into crediting of contributions. So the agenda, I'm going to quickly go over the current process of what we do. So that's very similar to what you guys heard back in May, as well as a little bit of the crediting contributions and updates of where we're at now and where we're going. So for the current process, we have where the employers sends us the file. So you send us the file. We immediately have access here at STRS. We look at the file, and then we get the contribution amount. And then from there, we associate the payment, or you associate the payment depending on the file. And depending on how much there is a difference, there is either a refund or collection that is needed. From that, a document, if the refund is required, then a document's created with the state controller's office, which is down the street. And then from there, that can take up to 2 weeks to be sent out to the employers. As you guys have already been noticing, is that it can take a little bit of time. There can be a gap, and depending on how long it takes to deposit the manual warrant, or when you guys have a check run, it can be longer than 2 weeks.